Okay, welcome everyone. Appreciate your being here. Good to see some faces I recognize, some new ones. Get to know you all. Get to see everyone. We're delighted that Linda Kozma-Spytek, who is HLAA National Technology Advisor, is joining us today. But before Russ more formally introduces Linda, let me make a few announcements, if I might. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Judy Alden. I'm currently president of the HLAA-DC chapter, and I should back up a step and say, so we can all communicate effectively. We have a cart captioner. So for those of you who do want to use captions, at the bottom of your screen, you see a row of icons. One will say CC, and if you click on that, you'll be able to access captions. There are an array of other icons at the bottom of your screen to raise your hand and use chat and those various functions, which I will leave to our speaker today, Linda, to advise us how she prefers that to be used. I have a personal bias. If people could please leave their video on so we can see one another, if possible. For some people, that's not feasible, I understand. But if it is, so we can kind of get to know each other and create a sense of community, albeit virtually. Any questions about Zoom? I think we're all zoomed out by now, but you never know. We're good? Okay, great. A couple specific announcements. Our website is being what's the right word? Redone, revamped, regrown, and it's pretty cool. If you haven't been to our website lately, I'd encourage you to do that, HLAADC.org, and I'll put that in chat, that email address. Yeah, on our website, you'll find lists of past programs and topics to refer to. You'll find upcoming activities and events and programs. And you'll also find, since COVID, we've been doing Zoom programs, a YouTube library. So, by topic and present presenter, you can go back in and check out some great information, like today's program, for example. We are, as you know, a volunteer organization. All these activities we're able to provide, thankfully, we're able to provide are because of volunteers. And we welcome those of you who are with us today and who are involved in our chapter. Please let us know if you're interested in volunteering. To be sustainable, we need people's time and talents. So if you are interested, you can go to our webpage and express that. I think on our registration today, there is a question. If you are interested, we'll respond to you promptly or speak to any board member. And we really are encouraging people to get more engaged and hands-on at the chapter level, so we are sustainable and can continue to offer these programs and services. And for those of you who are members, thank you for your membership. Time, talents, and money is what makes a volunteer organization hum. I think those are all the announcements, unless someone needs to correct me for further announcements. I will turn it over. Let me give it 30 seconds to no further announcements. Turn it over to Russ. Russ is past president of the chapter and continues kindly to handle all of our programs. So Russ, over to you.
Thank you, Judy. I will introduce our featured speaker in just a moment, but first, one announcement. Our next program will be December 2nd. Now that's a Saturday. Typically we do our programs on Sundays, but this one will be on Saturday afternoon at 2, December 2nd. And it will feature Joe Duarte, who some of you probably already know, especially because of his involvement in managing InnoCaption. And he'll be with us to lead and facilitate a discussion of the challenges that those of us with hearing loss face in communicating in various settings, and the devices, the apps, and the strategies we can use. So come and bring your questions. And yes, I did mean come, as this will be our first in-person program since the pandemic. For those of you on our mailing list, you probably have already received an announcement of this program. I think I sent it out on, I think it was Friday, just a couple days ago. If, however, you did not see it for some reason and would like to come, please send me an email. You can send it to me. It's Mishloff, RMISHELOFF, F as in Frank, the number 1 at gmail.com. And if you send me an email, say, you're interested in that program, but you did not yet receive an announcement, I'll make sure that you get one. Okay, and let's go on and let me introduce Lisa. Excuse me, I'm sorry, Linda. We're pleased to have Linda Kozma-Spytek, a technology consultant to the Hearing Loss Association of America and a lead investigator in the Deaf Hard of Hearing Technology Rehabilitation Engineering Research Center at Gallaudet University. Linda co-leads the Industry Consumer Alliance for Accessible Technology project also. Prior to her consulting work, she was a senior research audiologist in the Technology Access Program at Gallaudet University. She has more than 20 years experience in research, standards development, and public policy, working on communication access technology. One suggestion, with respect to the presentation, I'd ask you to, if and when you have questions, there'll be plenty of time at the end of Linda's presentation to get them addressed. In the meantime, if you want to put them down as they occur to you, you can put them in the chat box. The chat box, if you open it up and that string of icons, at the bottom, you can open up chat and you can type your question into the chat box, and then we'll address the questions as they occur to you after the formal presentation. Okay, enough for me. And without further ado, Linda, it's all yours.
Thanks so much, Russ. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here. Okay, I'm just pulling up the chat box so that I can see any questions that happen to pop up as I go along. But as Russ said, if you all can hold them, meaning wait for me to answer them until the end of the program, I think that will work out best. Now, I know the program said Auracast and my title says Bluetooth LE audio, but there's a reason for that, and that is that Auracast is enabled by Bluetooth LE audio, and the LE stands for low energy. We're going to be talking about all of those things, starting out with a little bit of history. Anyone who's seen a presentation I've done knows I like to sort of place technology in a context, and we're going to talk a bit about Bluetooth, where we've been and where we're going, particularly with regard to Auracast. So the first thing I want to do is I want to just talk a little bit about the place where you've probably been hearing lots of information about Auracast, and that is from something called the Bluetooth SIG, S-I-G. And the S-I-G stands for Special Interest Group. This is actually a very large standards organization. It's an international organization, and it's also a nonprofit. It's been around since 1998. It started with 5 companies and now has around 35,000 corporate members. So the Bluetooth Special Interest Group is a big organization, and it's headquartered actually in the Seattle, Washington area. But I would say for the last 3 years, most of the information that anyone is telling you about Bluetooth and Auracast and LE Audio is coming out of this organization. And this is the organization where the standard, the specification for Bluetooth came about. So it's these member companies who belong to this organization who come together and work to create the specifications for Bluetooth. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what I mean by specification. So this organization, as I said, develops the specifications. It also licenses all the products that have Bluetooth associated with them. So I think we've all seen this particular symbol on packaging, maybe on your computer, on a phone, those sorts of things where you'll see this image. And that means that it's been qualified as a device that operates according to the way Bluetooth specifies it should work. That's really important for Bluetooth working well, because it means that any company who shows this licensing symbol, the Bluetooth is operating in the same way across all of those devices, and it's been qualified for that. So that's sort of the second thing that the special interest group does, other than write the specifications, it qualifies products. And then the final thing is it promotes adoption of Bluetooth. So there actually is a special website that the Bluetooth Special Interest Group has developed for Auracast specifically. They are going literally around the world promoting Auracast. They've been in Asia most recently, but they are also doing a lot of conferences in the United States, both for people with hearing loss, like the Cochlear Implant Conference that's happening in Vancouver, that's coming up. They have been at the HLAA annual convention 2 years in a row doing demonstrations. They were at the European Hearing Aid meeting that happened just this past October, and they've been in China and Taiwan doing programs there. And the programs are both targeted for people with hearing loss, so organizations like HLAA, but they're also targeting large companies that manufacture any kind of audio product, from TVs to headsets, because Auracast is not meant just for people with hearing loss. It's meant for everyone to use, and it's meant to be something that is global. So the concept is that Auracast will eventually become worldwide and ubiquitous, meaning everybody will use it. And that's part of the Bluetooth Special Interest Group's job, is to promote adoption of Bluetooth, and they are traveling worldwide in order to do that. So I mentioned that Bluetooth is a specification. It's really sort of a set of rules, and it's to describe how devices communicate between each other. Of course, this is a wireless communication method, and it's using radio waves. It's kind of interesting because it's really become synonymous with audio, but that was not at all its original intent. The original intent was simply for two devices to talk to each other wirelessly. So a great example of this is this RS-232 protocol. So this was just a protocol that allows computers to talk to printers. So if you want to print something, you have to send from your computer to your printer some information about how that printing is to take place. And having that line wired between the two can be inconvenient. And being able to remove the wire and just communicate wirelessly was really the intent of Bluetooth originally, but not for audio from one machine to another, like a computer to a printer. But it was really audio streaming that was the first connectivity need that Bluetooth addressed. So you might not realize this, but Bluetooth has been around since 2001 for audio purposes. And of course, our phones don't look like this anymore, but they did back in 2001. And this is a type of earpiece that we use to communicate using our phone with our calling partner. So we could take calls using this earpiece, and our calling partner could hear us and we could hear them by having this just placed on our ear. So the reason that audio became really the core principle for Bluetooth had to do with how people were communicating over cell phones. So I'm sure many of you remember that when cell phones came out, there was a lot of concern about driving while talking on your cell phone and holding it up to your ear. And in fact, the major service providers, AT&T, T-Mobile, they can tell where your calls are being made. And what they learned was about a third of all mobile calls were happening in a vehicle when people were on the go. And they were very concerned about this, obviously, because their greatest fear was that there would be, of course, an accident. Someone might hit a child, for example, and this would completely destroy their business. So they wanted to come up with something that was going to get people to put the phone down, but still allow them to have this call in their vehicle. And Bluetooth enabled that. So that is why, one of the primary reasons why audio streaming really kind of took over this other purpose behind Bluetooth that was originally one device to another, just transmitting data. Well, now we use Bluetooth for all kinds of things. We're all familiar with using it for audio streaming. If you have, for example, speakers that are wireless, and you have an audio set that you want to, transmit audio around your house, you can do it via Bluetooth. You can listen via headsets. Probably many of you have Bluetooth hearing aids that you use for audio streaming. We also use it for location services. I know I have an AirTag that I use when I travel, and that will tell me when I put that in my luggage where in the world my luggage is. Usually it's with me, which is a good thing, but it allows us to use location services. And, things like, even I know some hearing aids have location services, so you can figure out where your hearing aid is. That's another use of Bluetooth. The data transfer is similar to what I mentioned before, where your computer might tell your printer to print something, but it's also for things like watches. So I have an Apple Watch that I use, and the data that it collects on my health statistics, I can actually see on my phone because of the Bluetooth connection. So it's sharing the data between my watch and my phone. That is a Bluetooth protocol as well. And then, of course, we have device networking. So if anyone has any smart home devices in their house that they use, say they want to, turn on their lights at a particular time, talk to Alexa or Google Home, whatever the case may be, and do something with that, like turn up the heat in their house when it started getting cold this fall. Bluetooth is used for that kind of device networking as well. So it has lots of uses. It's everywhere. But what we're really interested in is the audio streaming piece of this. Now, Bluetooth, as I said, is everywhere. And we're talking about wireless audio. And in fact, it's the largest Bluetooth market. And this was true for 2022. We don't have any statistics yet on 2023. But if we look at these numbers, they're pretty amazing. Bluetooth-enabled device shipments, 4.9 billion, not million, billion with a B. And streaming devices, 1.36 billion. And 100% of new tablets, PCs, smartphones, all contain Bluetooth technology. And this is something that is true worldwide. So remember I said that Bluetooth wants to see Auracast use worldwide and be ubiquitous. They've already achieved this in other ways with other things, particularly wireless audio. They're now wanting to expand that capability. So within Bluetooth, there are actually two types. Most people tend to refer them to as things like flavors of Bluetooth, but they really have to do with those set of rules that define Bluetooth. So some of you might be familiar with Bluetooth Classic. It's really how we were able to communicate by audio originally, using classic audio. It just allows that continuous two-way data streaming. I use it, of course, in my car when I'm traveling, and I have my phone hooked to my car and I can take calls on it. And I am using classic audio. Now, most phones, if we want to talk about phones in particular, also use Bluetooth Low Energy. And that is because Bluetooth Classic has very high power consumption. So it uses a lot of battery power in order to maintain this kind of two-way audio streaming. And that happens. That takes a lot of power. It eats up batteries. And so it has high power consumption. But we don't need something that's high power just to do some of these simple data transmission kinds of things, like when your phone communicates with your watch, for example. And so the low energy protocol was introduced probably 10 years or so after Bluetooth Classic came along. So it was low power consumption. It was just for this kind of periodic transfer of data, maybe, like I said, from a watch to a phone, that sort of thing. It did not include audio. So Bluetooth Low Energy as a type of specification of Bluetooth did not have any audio capabilities, only classic audio. And some of you might have devices, hearing aids, that utilize Bluetooth Classic in order to communicate and do audio streaming with your phone. LE Audio came out in 2020. Actually, it was January 2020 at the Consumer Electronics Show. This was a particularly bad time because the pandemic was just about to hit. So why did that matter? Well, it mattered because we had a lot of supply chain issues. So companies could not get their devices that they might be working on tested. They couldn't get chipsets that they needed to update their products. So the pandemic slowed a lot of things in terms of product development, and it also slowed down any products that were coming out with LE audio. So LE audio, as I said, is a big set of rules. There are all kinds of functions and features that LE audio permits, and one of them is Auracast. So I want to talk a little bit about where Bluetooth is currently and where we've come from with simply direct Bluetooth audio coupling. Because in fact, even though Bluetooth Low Energy, or LE, did not have audio capabilities, there have been a couple of companies that have made use of Bluetooth Low Energy in order to have audio streaming. The very first one to do this was Apple. So I don't know how many people might have made for iPhone hearing aids who are watching today, but Apple came out with this the very end of 2013. And this technology was not based on Bluetooth Classic, but rather Bluetooth Low Energy. And they had a proprietary extension on top of that, which meant that only Apple products and hearing devices that were made for Apple products could communicate with each other. But if you had an Android device or you had a hearing aid that did not have this made for iPhone capability, they were not interoperable, and you could not, for example, use an Android phone with them. So while this was a really great breakthrough for Bluetooth and for people to communicate, getting direct audio streaming between a phone and a hearing device, there were also limitations. And this had to do with the fact that Bluetooth Low Energy did not have an audio capability. So individual companies were creating that and making it proprietary or solely able to be used with their products. Apple was the first, and you may not remember this, but GN Resound, about a month after Apple came out, said, we have an MFI hearing aid. It just so happens that the very first hearing aid to be Auracast enabled is also a GN Resound hearing aid. So it's very interesting. GN Resound has sort of been at the front of all of these efforts around audio coupling. But in February of 2014, they introduced the first MFI hearing aid. And from that, there are many, many more hearing aids that have this capability. Now, at the time, Apple was interested, of course, in all hearing aid companies using their made for iPhone technology. But again, it was proprietary. So if you did not have an iPhone or an Apple phone, you weren't going to be able to use this technology. And so instead, what happened was the European hearing instrument manufacturers announced that they were going to be working with the Bluetooth Special Interest Group to create essentially what we have now with LE Audio and Auracast. So we're about on the 10-year, coming up on the 10-year mark from when hearing aid manufacturers worked with Bluetooth to develop the specification that we have now that will eventually be deployed as Auracast. So it's been 10 years in the making at this point. Now, if we look at what's available currently, I know of one hearing aid and one cochlear implant that are Auracast enabled. That's it right now. But Apple's made for iPhone, again, which started in 2013, it's supported by all models of iPhones, and it's currently supported in 67% of the US hearing aid market. Not 100, but 67%. And again, it utilizes that proprietary extension. So in 10 years, Apple's around at 67% of the US hearing aid market, and of course, in all iPhones. Now, I mentioned that Bluetooth Classic audio was first. That's what we used originally. That was in all cell phones. That's how your cell phone talked to your car, talked to a headset that you might use. But in 2017, the Sonova company decided that rather than go with Apple's made for iPhone hearing aids, what they were going to do was to support Bluetooth Classic. Of course, the problem with Bluetooth Classic is that it's very power hungry and uses a lot of battery. But all phones, whether they're Apple or Android, support Bluetooth Classic. So in fact, Sonova hearing aids could communicate with either type of cell phone. The last sort of to the game was Google's Android audio streaming for hearing aids. It's called Asha. Came out in 2019. It's supported by most recent Android handsets. So if you don't have an iPhone and you have an Android handset, it's probably running Asha so that you can stream audio from your Android phone with your hearing aid if it's enabled. But currently, it's supported by about 39% of the US hearing aid market. So not supported by as many hearing aids as the made for iPhone. But once again, it's also proprietary. It uses that low energy technology, but there had to be this additional work that Google did in order to make it capable of streaming audio. So we sort of have a mishmash of audio out there that's Bluetooth. We have made for iPhone, we have Bluetooth Classic, and we have Google's Android audio streaming for hearing aids. Once LE audio becomes more ubiquitous, the expectation is that these other types of connectivity audio streaming will go away in favor of LE audio. It's not going to happen immediately. It's going to be a fairly long transition period, but the expectation is eventually LE audio, which enables Auracast, is going to really supersede all of the things we have today. So in 2022, we don't have data yet for 2023. More than 75% of hearing devices sold in the US support some variant of direct Bluetooth audio coupling to wireless phones. So remember that this started in 2013. We're now not quite 10 years on in that process, and we have about 75% of hearing devices that are Bluetooth capable. So we can see what kind of timeline and trajectory all these other Bluetooth capabilities took. So we know, or we can guess, that LE Audio and Auracast are going to take time to deploy, time in terms of being utilized in hearing devices, time for them being utilized in phones, computers, all of these other things. So there is a transition period that's going to happen. So just again, to differentiate these two things, we have two types of Bluetooth technology. One is called Bluetooth Classic. One is called Bluetooth Low Energy, or Bluetooth LE. And we have classic audio is the audio capability under Bluetooth Classic. And under Bluetooth Low Energy, we have something called LE audio, or low energy audio. You may hear all of these various terms, so it's good to have a little bit of recognition of what they are. So we're going to focus now on what LE audio will allow. It's the case that LE audio is and Bluetooth Low Energy are backward compatible for their core specification. Bluetooth Classic is not forward compatible with Bluetooth Low Energy. So I think it's important to understand that this is something separate from this, and this will not interoperate with Bluetooth Low Energy. So what does LE audio provide you? Well, one of the most important things is improved audio performance. So what does that really mean? So it means that you can transmit audio information like via phone calls with high quality using very low power. Remember that Bluetooth Classic is power hungry, uses a lot of battery power in order for you to do that audio streaming. What LE audio permits is to get high quality audio with lower power or lower battery usage, which is really good. And in addition to that, at low latency. So the transmission of that audio, say from your phone to your hearing aid, happens really, really quickly. So it all has to do with how we code the audio. So in order for it to go over the air, say from a phone to earbuds, we have to change that audio into, in this case, mathematical information, and then change it back again in order to produce audio. So it's this audio coding that is permitting us to get that low power or low battery usage when we use LE audio. Another advantage of LE audio is that it increases the number of audio streams. This is the key thing that Auracast is going to permit: multiple streaming audio that is independent and synchronized. So you can have not just one audio broadcast, but multiple broadcasts of audio. And all of those broadcasts are synchronized, but they are independent of each other. So this permits stereo listening. If we're listening with two ears, we want that audio to arrive at our ears, not at different times, but at the same time. But the information is independent because we're hearing a little bit of something different in our one ear than the other. That's what gives us that sense of stereo. So this increased number of audio streams is really important. It's key to allowing Auracast to be a product that this supports. So Auracast allows for having many, many audio streams out there And that way you can have many, many people listening to the same thing. What they're listening to is all synchronized, but all of those channels are independent. So this is key. A key component that LE Audio has that enables Auracast. So here with classic audio, it's actually mono. You may hear it in two ears, but it's mono audio. LE Audio allows a separate channel for your right and left ear, which gives you the ability to hear in stereo. Now, if we think about multi-streaming or having multiple broadcasts, I wanted to use this picture as a way to talk about that. So let's imagine that all of these people are all listening to the same thing. They're watching a football game, but they all have different listening needs. And let's imagine that this TV allows for broadcasting Auracast. So let's imagine that we have this gentleman here, and maybe he's blind, but he likes listening to the game with audio description. So somebody's actually describing the audio of the football game, so he knows the action that's taking place. So he can have earbuds in, listen to the audio description of the game that's happening, and get that information. Here's another person. Maybe this person has hearing loss and doesn't want to just listen to the TV over the air. He wants to audio stream to his hearing aids. He's able to do that with Auracast. So he can pick up a separate broadcast from the audio description and hear it as well. Let's imagine that this woman would like to also watch the football game, but maybe her native language is Spanish. And what she'd like to do actually is listen to the game in Spanish, in her native language. And she can get a separate audio stream that might be Spanish language. So all of these people are using Auracast that's being transmitted from the TV that allows them to pick up these independent channels, one for audio description, one for hearing access, and one for language access, all at the same time. Now, when LE Audio was being developed, you might remember I said that the hearing instrument manufacturers came to the Bluetooth special interest group and said, we want to start doing, developing a specification that, unlike Apple's, isn't proprietary, isn't specifically about having Apple products. We want it to be something that anybody can use with any device. Well, that's what this LE Audio supports. So it's standardized support, and it includes standardized support for hearing aids. So not just headphones or other audio devices, but it has specific specifications that allow for hearing aid support. So it's not something special, it's not something proprietary related to hearing aid support. So I don't know if you have heard of or know about Bluetooth profiles, but these are the things that allow two devices to talk to each other. So, for example, when I'm in my car, my phone hooks up to my car stereo system. And it's able to do that because they both share the same type of profile. So they're able to communicate with each other. Even though they're both Bluetooth, enabled, they have to share this particular protocol in order to talk to one another. Now, my phone can also talk to my headset, and that's because they share a different profile and protocol, so they can speak to each other. But I cannot use my headphones to connect to my car stereo because they do not share the same profile. So these profiles, while you may not be aware of them, they're really important. And if two devices don't have the same one, then they might not communicate with each other. And so we have audio profiles specifically related to hearing access within LE audio. So there's a very broad general one. You don't have to remember these names, but they're related to telephony and media. Those are the kind of things we're interested in for audio. And they have specific ones for hearing access. And here's that Auracast part, public broadcast. So these profiles become important and are what enables two devices to talk to each other, like your hearing aid with your phone, or like your hearing aid with an Auracast broadcast. So what do these profiles provide for you? My expectation is that we'll see all phones having these, all hearing aids having these. So it's not anything that I think consumers are going to have to pay particular attention to, but it's always good to know these kinds of things exist. So in case you have some issue, this might be something to check out, but they all provide audio streaming, not just for voice communication like with your phone, but if you want to listen to music. And that may be on a personal device, or it might be some sort of public use. And we'll talk about some of those uses in just a minute. It also permits encryption if you want secure communication. I think that many of you might know that certain assistive listening systems are used in the courtroom because they allow for secure communication. So they use infrared in a courtroom versus some other kinds of communication like FM because it's more secure. So there are certainly times, even in workplace situations, where you need that kind of secure communication. So if you go to a meeting and you want to have your hearing aids communicate with the audio that is being provided in the room, and it might be, maybe you're working for the Defense Department, they want to make sure, for example, that those communications are secure. That's what these profiles permit. It also allows for low latency. So if you have, maybe some of you use remote microphones, and you want the information that the microphone is picking up to be transmitted to your hearing aid quickly. You don't want there to be a delay. And so this particular profile and these protocols allow for that very fast transmission, particularly when you have things like a remote microphone. It allows for two-way voice communication. So this is particularly important, if you're on a phone call or you're on a Zoom call, that kind of thing. And it also detects and selects audio broadcasts. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute, but remember my example from the living room where there was a TV. So you have to be able to know that there are these different broadcasts that are happening. And in addition to knowing those different broadcasts are happening, you want to be able to select the one that you're interested in. So if you're an English speaker, you're probably not interested in the Spanish language one. So you want to be able to see what's available and pick the one of interest to you. And that's what these profiles allow for. And we'll talk a little bit about how that will likely happen. And then finally, it also allows for remote control for program selection and volume control adjustments. I think all of you may have apps on your phone that you use with your hearing aids, and you change the program you have. Maybe you make some volume control adjustments. That's something you already can do with Bluetooth, and that's something that will be carried forward with LE Audio. So finally, the other thing that LE Audio does is expanded uses. This is very much related to this multi-streaming audio. So more ways for devices to network and interact. And of course, Auracast broadcast is really the way this is going to happen. So let's take a look at why we can do Auracast broadcast. And that is because with classic audio, your hearing aid and your smartphone, for example, have to be connected one-to-one. You're not able to listen or connect to something else if you're connected to your smartphone. Now, you may have set up a connection, say, to your computer, and you can go between your computer and your smartphone, but you're only doing one connection at a time. Your hearing aid to the smartphone, your hearing aid to the computer. You might be able to go back and forth smoothly, but you can't have multiple hearing aids connected to your smartphone or multiple hearing aids connected, say, to your computer at one time. And this is what LE Audio permits. This is what is going to enable the Auracast feature. And that is that you can have one source of audio. In this case, the example is audio, say, in a movie theater. And you can have a bunch of different devices connected to this single audio source. So in this case, we have someone with a hearing aid who's able to make use of it. Somebody who's using earbuds can make use of it. And all these different people with different ways of listening to audio can connect to the single source. That is the thing that LE Audio permits, and that is the service or the feature that we refer to when we talk about Auracast. So we can go through a few examples. This is an airport waiting area. And here's a silent TV, as they're called, because you can watch them, but you can't hear them. So imagine this TV having Auracast. So it's able to transmit the audio using Bluetooth, and both of these people can listen to the same broadcast. This person might be wearing hearing aids. This person might be wearing a headset, but they can both listen to the same audio stream at the same time, and that audio is synchronized between the two of them, but it's still independent. So we have that capability. Let's look at another example. Let's say you're in a pharmacy and you might have some trouble communicating with the pharmacist. Maybe there's, one of the glass barriers. Well, the pharmacist can have a way to transmit audio directly to your hearing aid. hear via Bluetooth Auracast. He can transmit to multiple sources, but of course, in this case, it's only one person being shown here, but imagine if it's this person and perhaps they're there with someone else who they're trying to help, maybe a parent. And so both people, if they're using hearing aids, could hear what the pharmacist is saying easily. So that's another use case. And of course, the theater. We already talked about movies. This is a very similar kind of scenario or use where you have the audio from the stage and anyone in the audience can access that audio that's being transmitted via Bluetooth and Auracast and listen with headset, with hearing aids, whatever they have, whatever technology they're using to get that Auracast broadcast. This is probably one of the most common scenarios that you might hear talked about with regard to Auracast, but there are many, many potential uses. So I think all of you are aware that hearing aids aren't enough sometimes in these situations, particularly when there's distance from the desired sound source, noise in the environment. Those two things, when the sound is distant, it's usually reduced in level. And if there's noise, then what you have typically is a reduced signal to noise ratio. Add that to the acoustic environment where sound may be bouncing or reverberating, it can really cause some real issues. And we've all experienced, I experience it as well. And the thing that allows us to overcome some of those situations are these assistive listening systems. So what we're looking at with Auracast is that it will become another option for assistive listening, another way to pick up the sound and transmit it to the receiver that you would wear, which would be your hearing aid, and it would be transmitted directly to your hearing aid. So you're going to hear it right through your hearing aid. It's not going to go through your phone. It's going to go direct to your hearing aid. So it represents another means of wireless transmission. So you probably are aware that already we have a lot of these kinds of wireless transmission types. We have what's called an induction loop or hearing loop. That's one kind of wireless transmission method. We have FM, digital modulation. There are infrared systems. More recently, we have Wi-Fi systems. To these wireless transmission methods, we're now going to be able to add Bluetooth as a way for these devices to connect and for us to get audio at a distance without getting the reverb or the noise. And it will function very much like the systems we have here. But we're going to talk about a couple of the advantages to going with something like Bluetooth that these other systems don't have. Well, I don't think I have to really convince anyone of the importance of assistive listening systems in this audience. But just as a reminder, and you've all experienced this yourselves, we actually know that speech understanding is better with assistive listening systems. People perceive that their communication is better. They feel more satisfied with their listening experience, and they have reduced listening effort. Most of these advantages we've looked at from the perspective of people with hearing loss. But I think the one thing that's really great about Auracast, at least if it comes to fruition in the way we are imagining it, is that I experience all of this kind of thing. I have reduced speech understanding and noise. My hearing is typical. I don't use hearing devices, but if it's noisy, if I'm in a really noisy situation, I'm not understanding speech as well. That affects my communication performance, my satisfaction, and it means I have to have more listening efforts so that the things that can be gained from assistive listening systems, pretty much anyone can take advantage of, particularly with something like Auracast, and benefit from. So we can't really do that with many of the systems that are out there currently, assistive listening systems, mostly because there are these, what I call connectivity silos. So if you are, if you have an FM system that you use, that FM system can't communicate with an infrared system. If you have an infrared system, that infrared system can't communicate with FM. If you're in a looped environment, you have to have a telecoil present in order to take advantage of that, or a receiver for the loop. So there are these sort of silos that we have that are currently present for connectivity. And we name them all. There are 5 basic ones now, which include the loop, the FM, the IR, the DM, and also more recently Wi-Fi. Also universality and interoperability. So you may go to one theater where they implement assistive listening via FM. You might go to another theater where it's looped. You might go to another location where they use infrared. And more recently, maybe you'll find yourself in a place where they have Wi-Fi. So all of those things are not interoperable with each other. And there certainly is not a single system that is universal among all locations. So you will encounter different things depending on where you are. The other thing that's problematic for the current assistive listening is deployment. We know that there aren't that many systems for assistive listening out there. The Bluetooth Special Interest Group actually did a survey of the how many locations they might be able to use Auracast in. It was in the millions of locations. We don't have assistive listening systems in nearly that many places. So availability of assistive listening is problematic, which means uptake and continued use is problematic because people can't consistently use these systems wherever they go. There are also some limitations in functionality and performance. None of these systems, for example, permit stereo. And there are some folks who really want to listen that way. There are other systems that aren't secure. So if you have a loop, you cannot make that loop secure so that others can't listen in if they have a telecoil. So those are some of the problems with some of the current systems that, at least the hope is, that Auracast will be able to overcome. So, like Bluetooth, the technology itself has a logo. Auracast broadcast audio is going to have a logo as well, and it looks like this. So the idea is that this will be displayed in places that implement Auracast. So in a theater, in a movie theater, for example, at your doctor's office, at any of the places, at the airport, at a train station, all of these places that implement it, you'll be able to know that based on seeing this particular symbol or logo. This logo also tells you that the system that's installed there has gone through that qualifications testing that the Bluetooth SIG requires. So we've seen, at least at this point, a few, particularly companies in China, saying that they have some devices that are Auracast devices, but they have not gone through the qualifications testing. And the Bluetooth Special Interest Group has addressed this with some of them. So this is why the logo is important, so that you know, have some confidence that what's being used in a particular location is the real deal, if you will. So what's that going to look like on a device that you might have? So that symbol that you just saw, that logo, that will be in places that have that broadcast, that Auracast broadcast. And what about the devices that are going to pick up that broadcast? There will be some symbols there as well that you will be able to recognize. Packaging, say on a hearing device, and also particularly on phones. So if we look at this, the Bluetooth symbol or logo is different, but related to Auracast. They're both that blue color, but they have slightly different graphics to distinguish between the two of them. Here's just a mock-up of a hearing instrument box. So don't think that this is a real hearing aid box. It's just to give you the idea of what you might see on the packaging for hearing aids. So a Bluetooth symbol, an Auracast symbol. These are not hearing aids. These are just earbuds that someone can purchase, and they too can have Bluetooth and be Auracast capable. So I think that's an important piece of Auracast and the discussion around it. And that is that this is going to be something utilized in both hearing devices as well as more consumer electronic audio devices like earbuds. Now, remember, we talked about the idea that if there are broadcasts out there, you want to pick the one you're interested in listening to. And so how will you do that? How will you know what's being broadcast? How will you select the thing that you want to listen to? Well, it's very likely that we'll be using phones as the assistant. So very much like we have today, where when you connect to Wi-Fi, you will see a list of possible Wi-Fi connections that you can connect to. You select the one you want. The same will be true for phones. So this is simply, the idea is that there will be an application that picks up the various broadcasts that are happening, and you select the one you want to listen to. Now, what's important to understand is that this is just selecting the broadcast. The audio does not go through the phone. The audio will go directly from the transmitter of that Auracast broadcast to your hearing device, or if you're like me, typically hearing, my earbuds, or in my case, AirPods. So the phone will be meant to be an assistant to select the broadcast you want to hear, but that audio then will go directly to your hearing device or whatever other audio device you're using. So the other thing I think that is probably of interest is that if you want to join a broadcast, if you're selecting it, I think we're pretty familiar with the concept of pairing. So remember, we had a picture of Bluetooth Classic where it was a phone and hearing aid only, that one-to-one connection. How do you make that connection? You do something called pairing. With Auracast, there's no pairing. You don't have to pair your device with the transmitter. All you need to do is have an assistant that lets you know what broadcasts are available, and it will be as simple as clicking on that or tapping that to pick up the broadcast. So no pairing is required to join an Auracast broadcast. So how might you join? Well, we've talked about using an assistant or a smartphone. I think it's very likely that that's going to be a common method for doing that. There are a couple of other possibilities that people have talked about. So we talked about just right now scanning for a broadcast. So the assistant on your phone is going to scan to see if there are any broadcasts, and then you select it. The other possibility, or another possibility, is something called tap to hear. So this might be as you're walking, say, into a movie theater, and you see that Auracast logo in the theater, you can take your phone and tap it against it. Just tap it, sort of like we do now to pay for things. You may be able to tap your phone and it connects automatically then to the audio from the movie in that particular theater, as opposed to, say, the theater showing a different movie that you're not at all interested in. So it's called tap to hear, similar to mobile payments, and it uses what's called near field communication. Again, you will be using a phone. The other possibility is that you scan a QR code. So maybe on your ticket to that movie, a QR code is printed. You scan it, and that tells your phone what audio to pick up, and then that tells your hearing aid to listen to that audio stream. So there are a variety of methods. I don't know yet whether we'll see all of these being utilized or whether there'll be a single one, but there are a number of methods for selecting that Auracast broadcast. Now, what if you don't have a cell phone? Because many of these rely on something like a cell phone as an assistant. And so folks are talking about the idea that there will be a primary broadcast, for example, in a theater. Maybe there's the English language broadcast and the Spanish language broadcast, but if you don't have an assistant, your hearing aid will pick up the standard broadcast. So if we're in the United States, it's very likely that your hearing aid, the default broadcast, would be the English language one, and your hearing aid, you just need to tap it in order to pick up the primary or default audio that's being played in that theater. So I think it's very likely that there will be a few people who maybe they forget their phone, don't have a phone to utilize for that kind of thing, and they'll be able to pick up that primary broadcast basically with a tap of the finger. Now, how we talked about knowing that a location had Auracast by having, for example, this logo. Here it's shown on the door. Maybe that's the door to a movie theater. But there's also discussion about having a searchable database for Auracast locations so that you can go online and search for the location that you're interested in going to see if it supports Auracast. There are a few things like this for some assistive listening systems. I think this will likely be kept up more to date than some of the current systems are that are available for just assistive listening. Because remember, this is something that's going to be available and not just utilized by people with hearing loss, but anyone who has earbuds, headset, whatever, and they want to listen over those at whatever event they're going to. Now, there have been Auracast demonstrations. I don't know if any of you have been to the HLAA convention the last 2 years, but you might have been there, and the Bluetooth Special Interest Group was there giving demonstrations of this technology. But you can go to the Bluetooth Special Interest Group website, and you can use this URL. So it's just www.bluetooth.com/Auracast. Not only will you be able to see some demonstrations, video of demonstrations, but there's just a huge amount of information available there about Auracast. So you can go in as in-depth as you might care to. I also have this demo that was done it was in Barcelona, Spain, earlier this year, I believe, that shows several different venues that were mocked up. So this demo took place at a restaurant in Barcelona. It was during the World Mobile Congress. So these are all kinds of audio producers, meaning people who produce headsets, TVs, pretty much any kind of consumer electronic that you can imagine that has audio. And the Bluetooth Special Interest Group had a special demo in a restaurant. And this guy, he videoed himself going through each of the demos. The reason I really like his demo in particular is because when I contacted him and said, I can't show your video or recommend your video unless you add captions and make sure those captions are correct, he added those captions within a couple of hours of my email to him. He responded that quickly. So if you watch this, you will get accurate captions and be able to see the demo that is done. And it's pretty much the same demo that they've been using in all these different places worldwide that they've been going. But I highly recommend him. He was super responsive to my request for accurate captions. So I think we might have started the discussion today about a timeline, or maybe we had a question right at the top. I think Russ might have asked me, what's the timeline for Auracast? Well, it's a good question, but all we have are projections at this time. And so there have been some analysts who are looking at this issue and have some projections about what they expect to happen. So these are timelines in terms of number of years from 2023. So the projections have suggested a 5-year transition to near 100% support for LE audio in platform devices. So what are platform devices? Well, they're things like phones, tablets, PCs. This makes a lot of sense because phones, tablets, and PCs already have 100% support for Bluetooth Classic and Bluetooth Low Energy, but not that audio piece that we need. So they already, all of them, have Bluetooth. What we're now waiting for is them to support LE audio. And how will that happen? All of them are going to need new chipsets. So these are little electronics that you have inside your devices that would enable LE audio. Some of the devices may already have them, and the only thing that's required is a software update. But the expectation is that in 5 years, we're going to see 100% for LE audio in all of these types of devices. What about hearing device manufacturers? Well, we know that they're developing a Bluetooth LE audio enabled option. So we know that, of course, because it was the hearing device manufacturers who went to Bluetooth in order to get us going down this road for LE audio and Auracast. So I expect absolutely every hearing device manufacturer to have an LE audio enabled option. What's projected is that 100% of hearing device manufacturers will have an LE audio option. That's a key word, option, in the next 5 years. That means an option within all of their hearing aid lines. So they're going to come out with these probably on some sort of regular schedule, but at first it's going to be one model, not all models. So they think in 5 years, every hearing device manufacturer will have one model that has this LE audio option. So what's on the market right now? Not a lot, not a lot, but what we've seen, and we saw this at the very end of 2022, Cochlear Corporation announced that their new Nucleus 8 sound processor was LE audio and Auracast capable. More recently, it was just in October, right before the European hearing aid manufacturers met, Resound said their Nexia hearing aids and the TV Streamer Plus were both going to be LE audio and Auracast capable. This is the idea of all hearing aid manufacturers having an option. That's what this represents. This is Resound's option among all their hearing aid models for including LE audio and Auracast. So right now, it's Nexia. My expectation is as they continue to introduce new models, all of these new models are likely to have LE audio and Auracast capability, but it's not going to be everything all at once. So that's the hearing device side, but what about consumer electronics? Because remember, the one thing I think that's so exciting about this, and I think is going to increase deployment, is that this technology is not siloed. It's not just for people with hearing loss. It's really for anyone to make use of. And in August, Samsung announced that their Galaxy Buds 2 Pro, so just a regular earbud that anyone would wear, and their smart TVs, but only certain models, again, single, in this case, 2 options from Samsung, are LE audio and Auracast capable. So these TVs can have an Auracast broadcast, and then if there are 2 people in the household with Resound Nexia hearing aids, they should be able to stream between that TV and their hearing aids, both people, without any kind of streamer needed. Now, there are also some other standalone products that are out there. This is by a company, both of these are Chinese companies, Voce and More. That's just the name of the product. These are transceivers, and what you can see here is a little dongle. The idea here is you plug this in, say to your computer, and it allows you to transmit an Auracast signal that gets picked up by the receiver. And then if you have a neck loop, maybe you can put that on and listen. And you're using Auracast. It could be simply, for me, I may use earbuds, that sort of thing, or a headset, a wired headset. But these transceivers, we're seeing them out there now. So the idea would also be if you are doing, a presentation, you have your own laptop and you want to transmit the audio, you could plug this in, and anyone who had a hearing aid or say an earbud that was LE Audio or Auracast capable could pick up that transmission. We're going to see, I'm expecting a lot of these kinds of things that are for individual use. We're also going to see a lot of consumer electronics. And of course, we're going to see things coming out for all the hearing aid companies or hearing device companies like Cochlear. Interesting, GN Resound was the first hearing aid company that got on board with Bluetooth connectivity between phones and hearing devices. They are now the first company to implement Auracast and LE Audio. So I'm going to go ahead and go to questions, but I wrote a couple of questions that are the top questions I receive whenever I give a presentation like that, like this one. And the first question is, should I wait to get hearing aids or wait to update my current hearing devices until Bluetooth LE Audio is available in hearing devices that I want or need? My response is, if you need hearing aids now, get them now. Don't wait. If you need hearing assistance, get it. If you have current hearing aids that are working well for you, then that might be a situation where maybe you decide to delay replacement for a little while, but only if your hearing aids are working well and satisfying all of your needs. If you need new hearing aids, get them now. Do not wait. The other question that I am often hear is, will I be able to take advantage of the LE Audio features if my hearing device, smartphone, or both are not LE Audio capable? So this is an interesting question, of course, because we're going to have folks who maybe just get new hearing aids and don't have LE Audio built in and will want to take advantage of it. So my expectation is that if you don't have this audio capability, that it's very likely that we'll see more of these transceivers, like I showed you back here. These. Now, yes, this is very much like, okay, now I have to get some new equipment. Now I have to pay money to, have yet another piece of equipment that I'm using. But my expectation is that will be the way that people can take advantage of LE Audio if it's not currently built in to their hearing aids. Now, if you have it in your hearing device, but your smartphone is not capable, remember that my expectation is anyway, that hearing aid manufacturers will be creating devices that you can tap and pick up that default signal directly. So there are some options if your hearing aid or your smartphone, which will act as the assistant for selecting the broadcast, if you don't have LE Audio and those things, there are some possible options to address that. So we'll honestly have to wait and see what happens, what comes out. So these, in some ways, this is just me guessing what we're going to see, but it's not guessing without reason. So I do have some reasons for thinking this. I've been participating in an audio sharing project with the Bluetooth Special Interest Group now for about 2 years. So that's been a really interesting experience and a way to get some information that might not be fully shared with the public, but that's my best guess in terms of what we'll be seeing and the ability to take advantage of LE audio if you don't have it in your hearing device or your smartphone. So those are the top 2 questions I hear all the time. But what I'd like to do now is take a look at the chat and see if there are any questions. Okay, so I had a question from someone who said, define MFI. MFI is made for iPhone. So the M is made, F4, and that lowercase I is iPhone. And that's how Apple spells any of their products. It's with a lowercase I, iPhone. So made for iPhone, MFI always refers to Apple. And it always refers to the communication protocol that is specific to Apple and proprietary. So it's when you're using an Apple product with your hearing aids that have that protocol or are made for iPhone hearing aids. So I hope that that clarified MFI. So I have a question. What should our 3 main takeaways be? Well, I think that one is that Auracast, if it meets the promise, the expectation, it will be a game changer, in my opinion, for audio access in all kinds of spaces. And that's because it's something that isn't only for people with hearing loss, that it is for everyone. And I think that will make a big difference in how and where it gets deployed, because people can see the benefit. And now we're not talking about a smaller group of people, meaning those with hearing loss, but everyone. And I think that will make it, that will make a big difference. So that's, I suppose, a main takeaway. I think it's important to have some understanding that your hearing aids, if you're interested in this technology, that they need to have LE audio. I know sometimes these terms can be daunting to remember and think about, but having just a little basic understanding of that nomenclature can be really helpful, and it can help you talk with your audiologist also about Auracast and LE audio. And the third takeaway is that it's going to take time. Deployment is not going to be overnight. The transition is going to take years, not months, not days, but years. So just like, really, it's sort of just like any other technology change that we've seen. Who could imagine not having a smartphone today when these smartphones only came out 10 years ago? It's almost hard to believe that the first iPhone, which was the first smartphone like this, came out just 10 years ago. So technology transitions take time, and I think that's a really important thing to think about. Unfortunately, we can't know what that time is going to be. We have those analyst projections. Who knows if they're correct, but it's going to take time, years, not months. So those are the three takeaways. I had a question, will Auracast be able to send over a loop? Oh, I'm sorry, this is from, hi, Les. Hi, Les Greenberg. No. So Auracast is not transmitted over a loop. It is transmitted over the air via radio signals. The loop signal is a magnetic signal. Now, it is the case that I have heard from various manufacturers of loop systems that they are considering creating assistive listening systems that have both loop technology and Auracast technology in one package. I don't know if we'll see that or what we'll see deployed, because we do not have any locations yet, any of these systems yet that are installed in places. But yes, the signal for Auracast is not sent over a loop. It's sent over the air via a radio transmission, and it's a completely separate technology. I had a question, does the pharmacist have to use earbuds? So I had an example of someone speaking with a pharmacist. They don't need to use earbuds, although that might be one way to implement this. What they do need is, just as you suggest, they need a microphone, right? So they need something that's going to pick up their voice so that it can be transmitted to the person who they're speaking to. And then they probably need something so they can hear the person. I know the glass, like at the bank or pharmacy, can be a problem even for people with typical hearing. But the thing is, yes, they need some sort of microphone so that the person speaking, their voice can be picked up and transmitted to the person who's listening. Whether that microphone is part of an earbud, could be, you know, a headset that sits like this. But the basic concept is they need to be able to speak into a microphone so that their speech can be transmitted over the air using those radio signals. I have another question. It says, in classic Bluetooth, there is the symbol for strength bars, anything like this in Auracast? Well, that is an excellent question. And right now, in two different places, one in the US and the other in Europe, there are assistive listening device installers, hearing aid manufacturers, who are coming together to develop some standards for installing Auracast transmitters. Now, does that mean that we'll see this kind of signal strength being shown? My guess is yes, because it's a common concept. Just like, you know, you talked about, we see it for Wi-Fi, we see it for our cell phones and their the signal strength connected to the tower. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see that. Right now, we don't know because we haven't had this come out yet. And as always, manufacturers of these Auracast transmitters keep all of that information close to the vest. They don't want to reveal anything, mostly to their competitors. But again, they're not going to talk about it until they're ready to introduce a product. But I wouldn't be surprised if they had something along those lines. Another question, is there anything that would make a venue reluctant from introducing Auracast? Well, I think that, I suppose in answering that, and this person says, thinking of the upfront cost of induction loops, for example. So yes, I think that's an excellent question. The Auracast transmitters are relatively at least we've been told, going to be inexpensive, meaning a few $100s. That's a much lower cost than you'll see for an induction loop. The other thing that's true is it's less of a hard sell, in my opinion, because it's something that everyone can make use of. So you don't have to convince them of the audience, this particular audience need, but it's really for everyone. So I think the fact that the cost of installation will be lower than, for example, a loop, and the fact that it's not special for a particular group will make it more appealing. And of course, the other thing is that it's very likely that this will be considered meeting ADA requirements for assistive listening. We'll likely see that happening over time. It's certainly the case that the Bluetooth Special Interest Group is paying very close attention to policy, not only in the US for things like ADA, but internationally as well, because remember, they want this to be something that is worldwide. Hello, Lisa Devlin. Lisa has a question. She says, what are the costs going to be for various venues to install Auracast? So that's a slightly different question than what the device itself will require. So the Auracast transmitters, we've been told, will be on the order of several $100s. What the installation itself will cost, I don't have any kind of ballpark figure for you. Most of these installations, you're going to have the transmitter up high to reduce any interference from, just people's bodies and things like that. And it's very likely that if you have a very, very large venue, you're going to need multiple transmitters. So that's going to increase the cost in terms of the number of transmitters you have, but also installing those individual transmitters. Again, they'll all be synchronized. So it's just a matter of making sure the signal strength is appropriate for a large venue. And final question, are audiologists involved in the development and use of Auracast so that part of the equation is addressed? So what I do, I would say not. So, okay, so not probably in the development per se. Certainly not in the development of the specification with Bluetooth, because that organization, you have to actually be a business to join. So as a researcher, I could not join the Bluetooth Special Interest Group to participate in this effort. The way that audiologists likely might have been involved in development, if at all, would have been because they work for a hearing device manufacturer. So it's those audiologists that are employed by, say, Starkey or G and Resound, who might have had something to do with development. I'm doubtful, but if I'm thinking about it, that would be the one way I could imagine that they had some involvement. Now, in the use of Auracast, certainly they're going to need to be talking with anyone who is making a purchase of a hearing device from them. So they're going to need to be able to talk to them about the capabilities and how they connect and, everything that goes along with using a feature like this. Part of this is going to really be ongoing education, like anything else for audiologists. And I told you the Bluetooth Special Interest Group has been going to things like consumer organization meetings, like the CI conference, like HLAA. Well, they also are going to conferences for audiologists. So they went to the American Academy of Audiology last year. They're going again this year in Atlanta. So they are providing that initial, I will say, education to audiologists about the capabilities of Auracast and sort of the background, much like what I have given you. But the way that this specification, this Bluetooth specification was developed, each manufacturer can kind of implement it in many ways as they choose. So the interface that you might use on your phone to select a broadcast may look different depending on which hearing aid you use. So there are things about the way this may operate, not at a high level, but some of the details may be different depending on the hearing device manufacturer or even the phone manufacturer, which is very likely to serve as that assistant. So that will mean, just like anything else that an audiologist has to deal with, each hearing aid company has things that are unique to it, even terminology that they have to learn. And so it's likely that that will be the case with Auracast as well. So part of the education, once we get to like GN Resound now coming out with this hearing aid, and Cochlear coming out with their implant, the Nucleus 8 external processor, those companies are going to be providing information and education for audiologists, in addition to what the Bluetooth Special Interest Group has already been doing. So I think I've answered all of the questions. I don't know if there are any further questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing just so we can have see each other a little bit better. But if there are other questions that folks have about the presentation or anything they'd like to know or ask, I'm happy to entertain any other questions. It's exciting technology. You know, we're almost 4 years on from that initial announcement in 2020 that the Bluetooth Special Interest Group did at the Consumer Electronics Show. The pandemic slowed things considerably. I'm hoping that now that we have 2 device manufacturers who've come out with devices that support this technology, that we're going to begin seeing more of that. I've heard that probably after the first of the year, we'll be hearing more. But you never know. I think sometimes they're overly optimistic on suggesting timelines, but that's what I've heard.
If there are other questions, I suspect, you know, it's not a terribly large group now. Why don't you just orally call them out?
And there may not be any, which is fine.
Don't hear any.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, thanks so much for having me, Russ. I really appreciate it. And hopefully people have learned something new about Auracast, or just heard, maybe have what they've already heard reinforced. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you very much, Linda. I know I've learned a lot. And actually, I was relieved that, you know, some of the research I'm doing now for myself on new devices, everything you says relieve me to believe I'm probably on the right track. And that's always good to know.
Great.
Thank you very, very much. And thank you also to Claire, you know, who did a great job as always with the captions. And Judy, do you want to complete it? You're muted.
I would only underscore what you had to say, Russ. Thank you very much, Linda. I can only say wow to the message and wow to the messenger. You know, high concept, but also very realistic. What should we be suggesting to folks near term while we await this incredible life, game changer. So thank you for all that. And thank you to Claire as well. I just wanted to underscore what you said, Ross, and express my appreciation.
And thank you all for coming. I hope you found it as educational as I did, and that's a lot. So
Great.
thank you all. So we'll close it at that.